I will started recording. So I am Marisa Crisoko. I'm currently the program director of the Technical Assistance for Brownfields program in EPA Region 1. And today I will tell you a little bit about preparing for EPA coalition grants, which is a type of assessment grants that the EPA provides. So the reason that we are starting today is that, right now it's June 28th and everyone is still very relaxed in terms of, preparing for assessment grants. But we know that after the solicitation comes out on September 15th, people get kind of like anxious about what the right type of grant is and what the differences are. So we want to get ahead of that. And the learning objectives, what we want you to know at the end of this webinar is to know what options that are for MARC grants, and MARC stands for Multi-Purpose Assessment, Revolving Loan Fund, and cleanup grants. So what options there will be available in fiscal year 25, be able to select the appropriate type of grant for your organization, understand the differences between community-wide and coalition assessment grants, understand how to develop partnerships if you're considering a coalition grant, criteria to select your target areas and sites for assessment, and then plan for additional training and resources to plan the proposal. So in FY25, there will be community-wide assessment and coalition grants, and both of those are different types of assessment grants. Traditional cleanup grants, multi-purpose grants, and this year there will also be available revolving loan fund. And today we are going to only talk about the assessment grants, but we will have webinars on the other types of grants moving forward. So just to get a sense of what kind of awards were given in the previous fiscal year, you see here that across the entire country, there were approximately 90 assessment grants, 70 cleanup, and 20 multi-purpose grants, but the majority of the funding goes towards cleanup grants that have much higher dollar amounts. So in terms of kind of like your chances to get an assessment grant, they are fairly high. And then there are three types of assessment grants. State and tribe grants, as the name implies, are only applicable if you are a tribe or a state, whereas coalition grants and community-wide grants are applicable for regional planning organizations and other types of entities, and we'll talk about that. So you see here that the most frequent type of assessment grants are the community-wide grants, but the coalition grants approximately half that. However, coalition grants have more money, so the amount of funding that goes towards them is overall higher across the country. So I will not address the revolving loan fund or RLF grant at all today, but I do want to give you a little bit of an overview of assessment, cleanup, and multi-purpose grants. So if you're considering applying for an EPA grant, you are most likely ready for assessment if you have identified multiple brownfield sites across your jurisdiction that don't have any phase 1 or phase 2 assessments and need that. You should know that the sites that you can include here can be privately owned, but to use the EPA funding and do assessment there, you will need an access agreement with the owner to conduct the work. And these sites can be in one or multiple target areas. So if you are a regional entity, you can have multiple towns as part of your assessment grant. If you are a town, then you probably want to choose like one more neighborhood or census tract. You are ready to go for a cleanup grant if you're considering a remediation of a single site, and then your organization must own that site by the time that you apply for the grant. So on July 10th, we have another webinar that will really spell out this criteria so you get ready for it. So you want to make sure that that site has phase 2 assessment done, that you have what we call an assessment of brownfield cleanup alternatives, APCA ready by a consultant, and a general idea of the site reuse plan. A multi-purpose grant combines assessment and cleanup, so you can have multiple sites as part of that grant at different stages of characterization, but at least one must be ready for cleanup and owned by your organization. So as you saw in the previous slide, multi-purpose grants are very competitive. So there's a lot fewer being awarded. Typically, Region 1 gets like 1 or 2 every year. So assessment or cleanup are the most likely grants that you will pursue. So there are 2 types of assessment grants: the community-wide ones and the coalition grants. For a community-wide assessment grant, there is a single entity that applies for the grant, a single applicant. And we'll talk about who that can be. And you can apply for up to $500,000 and spend that over 4 years. A coalition grant, as the name implies, is a coalition or a group of multiple entities. There is a lead applicant, and there must be a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 4 additional members that are part of the coalition. So since there are more entities that are involved in this grant, you can apply for up to $1.5 million, and then you still have 4 years to spend that money. So let's go into the details now. Who can apply for a community-wide assessment grant? As I mentioned before, it's a single applicant, and it could be a state, a tribe, a city or a town, a regional planning commission, economic development corporation, or a non-profit organization. So any types of these entities are eligible to apply for a community-wide assessment grant. For a coalition grant, the lead applicant can only be a state, a tribe, or a regional planning commission, or a COG, of Council of Government, what a lot of states have here in Region 1. And members of the coalition can be a town, a city, a nonprofit organization, and land bank entity, if that exists in your area, or an economic development corporation. And those members must not have any grant, any MARC grant, or any EPA Brownfield grant after 2017. So the idea here is that the entities that are members don't have the capacity to manage MARC grants on their own, and so that's why they partner with a lead. And this clause cannot be an agency or instrumentality of themselves. This means that if you are a regional planning organization and an economic development corporation under one umbrella, you cannot consider those to be lead and member. There have to be separate legal entities for one to be the lead and the other one to be the member. So, as I mentioned before, an important criteria for the non-lead members is that they have lack of capacity to apply for and manage their own Brownfields grants, and that they don't have lack of access to Brownfield grant resources. So this is, for example, if these are small towns with a low population, a rural community that has low staffing levels, no grant writers, the fiscal and administration systems don't have enough people to be able to manage a whole EPA grant, and there are high demands on other municipal services. So these are all arguments that you can use in the proposal to essentially describe that the non-lead member does not have enough capacity to apply for a grant themselves. Here are some examples of what coalitions look like. EPA Region 1 actually doesn't have a lot of history in applying and getting coalition grants. There was only one coalition grant in fiscal year 23 by the Northeastern Vermont Development Corporation. And here, this entity partnered with 3 non-lead partners. Rural Edge, that was a nonprofit developer for affordable housing. The Northern Forest Center, a nonprofit organization, and the Northeastern Vermont Regional Hospital, that was also a nonprofit organization. So all 3 coalition members here were nonprofits present in different rural areas of Northeastern Vermont. And so the coalition applied for a $1.5 million grant to spend money across the development corporation territory. So this is one example of what a coalition can look like. Another example is from an entity in Texas. So the East Texas Council of Governments had Also 3 members, the City of Marshall, that was a local unit of government, Kilgore College Foundation, that's a nonprofit organization, and Gladewater Economic Development Corporation, and Gladewater was another town. So this gives you a sense of another type of coalition that has a mix of different types of partners that range from towns to nonprofits to EDCs. And you can mix and match, and you can have a minimum of 2 and up to 4. So there are some additional requirements for a successful coalition. So each member, both the lead and the non-lead members, must have 1 target area with brownfield sites, and there's no overlap allowed in those target areas. So to go back here, to the example, here, the East Texas Council of Governments had another city that was the target area and 3 additional areas, and one of them was the City of Marshall, the other one was in the town of Kilgore, and the other one was in Gladewater, in the town of Gladewater. So there were 4 target areas with target brownfield sites across that coalition. So that is a requirement. And each of the members, lead and not lead, must have at least 2 priority sites in their target area that you talk about and you put in your narrative information sheet. And over the life of the grant, there must be a minimum of 5 sites that are assessed. So you cannot have less than 5 sites to apply for a successful grant. And finally, the last thing is that you must have signed a memorandum of agreement or have signed letters by each member. And those letters have to be signed by the authorized representative. And that is part actually of the proposal. So this is what a memorandum of agreement looks like. There is a template that EPA provides. I will click here so that you can see what this looks like. So this is their page. So you can download that and make any changes and have everyone sign. But I won't go over this right now, but I will tell you what the elements you must address in the memorandum of agreement. You need to talk about what is the period of the grant, who is the lead member, who are the coalition partners and the contacts for each partner, what is going to happen as part of the grant, state that the lead member will conduct procurement for the consultant services, and that the lead will also lead the process of development for site selection. And you can also do that in advance, or you can do that as part of the grant to have an agreement on how the money will be distributed between the members. So if you have, let's say, 4 members, you can say we're going to spend, 400,000 in each, or we're going to do 1 million here and 200,000 there, and that, you will spell out in the cooperative agreement. You do not need to spell that out in the memorandum of agreement before you submit the proposal. You will also state that the lead will collaborate with each member and every member would contribute to the scope of work for each site, and that the lead will ensure, working with the partners, that community engagement takes place in each of the communities that are part of the lead members. And so that memorandum of agreement has to be signed by all partners, or you can have individual letters that every partner signs. Obviously, the memorandum of agreement is like one document, so it's more time effective to do that. So how do you identify priority sites? We will have a whole other webinar on using demographics and doing this, but here I will just give you a very quick 2-minute introduction. So for each of your target areas, you want to identify all the brownfield sites across the geographic boundary of your town or your RPC, whatever you are. You want to map those sites and see if you have clusters of those sites in 1 or more census tracts. So census tract is usually the geographic unit that you need to talk about in your grant, and that's going to be your target area. And then see what are the demographics in those target areas compared to the EPA criteria. So you will use a tool like CGEST or EJ Screen to look at the demographics and select sites in areas with underserved communities. So I know that this is, a very quick introduction, and we have a pre-recorded webinar on this on our website, but we will also have a new webinar that we will provide later in the summer and early fall. So what are priority sites? As I mentioned, you must have at least 2 sites per member. These sites must meet the brownfield definition, so be underutilized or abandoned and have potential for contamination based on past uses. They can be privately owned, but you cannot be liable for contamination. So for example, if you have like a landfill that the town owned and operated always, you are not eligible for brownfields money for that landfill. You can include schools, and they can be considered for hazardous building material surveys. So that is one kind of like exception to the liability rule because of the hazardous building materials. And if you don't know where to start, you want to consult with your state brownfield coordinator and your state lists, you can also get in touch with us, and we can help you identify sites in your jurisdiction. So, additional resources that are available. We have our summer webinar series. So on today, we're talking about the coalition grant, and on July 10th, we are going to talk about a cleanup grant. On July 19th, we're going to have another webinar on redevelopment. But if you're interested in applying for an EPA grant, we can work with you over the summer to do some prep work so that when the time comes, you don't have to kind of like rush and figure out eligibility, figure out the sites, doing this work in advance. So we really encourage you get in touch with us, before the solicitation comes out. And then on our website, we also have several webinars for grant support, preparing for grants, addressing displacement, EJ screen, public health data, and so on. So the typical timeline for the grant cycle is that the EPA releases the guidelines sometimes in early to mid-September. Then the grant applications are submitted typically before Thanksgiving. They review them until May, and that's when they select the recipients. And then finally, the June or July of the following year, the work plans are submitted and the grants are awarded. So we provide free reviews and support on the grant applications. This year, we will do a first round of reviews in late October, a second round in early November, and then typically mid to late November, we can review your final submission. We also provide support with preparing the grant itself. So our fall municipal assistance program, the request for proposals is now open, and the applications are due July 15th. So you can just go on our website and you will see this banner, and you can click on the link and apply. So we will help you prepare the narrative section 1, the target area description and site description, but you have to tell us what the sites are. We help you with demographic data, public health data, stakeholders, and community engagement plan. We can help you with cleanup, with assistance with organization of a public meeting for cleanup and multipurpose grants. And we provide you with templates and supporting documents and a full review. So the municipal assistance program participation can really kind of like, we do a lot of hand holding to get you ready. So if you're interested in that, July 15th is the deadline. Just very quickly, this is the impact of our support. I won't go over everything that's on this slide, but I will tell you that from the 32 EPA grants that were awarded in fiscal year 24, we supported 30 grant reviews, and 25 of the ones that we supported were awarded. So our kind of like hit rate for award is 78%. So we are, really putting a lot of thought and care into our review process, and we encourage you to reach out to us to be successful. So that is all I had. I will be happy to take any questions. This is our email, our website, and our LinkedIn. Yeah, with that, I will stop sharing and open the floor to John and Michelle for questions.